Happy weekend and greetings from Malaysia, dear audience. Uh, Here we are again after, first of all, I would like to apologize for missing a few sessions, I think about 3 sessions due to some technical issues, some unavoidable situation. So here we are again. That's why we are doing it today on Saturday, because we have missed too many sessions. And I hope, I'm very sure you're going to enjoy this session today. Our topic today will be on understanding research paradigms. Okay, for this this is under understanding research series. Yeah, so let's start. For this, I would like to invite our ambassador, Professor Dr. Rania Lampu, to start a session. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Estera. Good afternoon from Athens, from Greece. Thank you very much for this invitation to conduct together this research series. Elegant Higher Education is a platform dedicated to collaboration, critical thinking, exploration, and now the realm of research also. Today, as you said, we're going to discuss about research paradigm. Research paradigm is more than just a method or a framework, it is a worldview. It has to do with philosophy, it has to do with a way of understanding, of questioning, of interpreting the world around us. So whether we align with positivism, interpretivism, or critical theory, or pragmatism, our research paradigm shapes the questions we ask, the methods we use as researchers, and ultimately the knowledge that we produce. So thank you, and let's have an insightful session ahead. Let's get started. I will share now my presentation. Can you see now my presentation?
I have to add to the stage. Yeah, you can see. You can proceed.
Can you see also the change of slides?
Change of slides. Can you try? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So understanding research paradigms is crucial for anyone engaging in academic or scientific research. A research paradigm refers to a set of shared beliefs, values, and assumptions, practices, of course, that guide how research is conducted, is interpreted, and understood. So it includes assumptions about reality, ontology, how to come to know that this reality, so epistemology, and the methods used to study it, so methodology. So we could say that it's a fundamental set of beliefs and assumptions that guide how researchers understand the world. It shapes the way research is designed, is conducted, and interpreted. So why is a research paradigm important in academic research? Because first, it provides a coherent framework for researchers to plan their studies, to select methodologies, and interpret findings consistently. It defines research approach because different paradigms, positivism or critical theories are going to see, lead to different approaches, qualitative, quantitative, mixed approach, based on underlying assumptions about reality and knowledge. It shapes research questions and objectives because the paradigm influences what kind of questions are considered meaningful and how phenomena are defined and studied. By clearly aligning with a paradigm, research becomes more systematic and credible because it follows accepted standards within this worldview. So it ensures consistency and rigor. And of course, facilitates communication. Facilitates communication because understanding the paradigm helps researchers explain their work to others, allowing for clearer discussion of methods and findings across disciplines. So briefly, we could say that the research paradigm is crucial because it forms the foundation upon which all academic research is built, ensuring clarity, consistency, and validity in the pursuit of knowledge. What are the major research paradigms that we need to know before starting writing any research paper? Ontology, which is the nature of reality. Here we can see that reality is objective and can be observed and measured. Epistemology, how we know reality, knowledge is gained through observable and measurable facts, and methodology, quantitative methods, for example, such as experiments or survey statistical analysis, and the key goal is to test hypotheses and predict outcomes. So a researcher, for example, tests the effect of a new drug using a controlled clinical trial. So ontology, epistemology, and methodology. First, here, as I mentioned before, one major research paradigm is positivism. Reality here is objective. It can be objective measured. Knowledge, as I mentioned before, is gained through observable facts, the quantitative methods, and test hypotheses. On the other hand, we have interpretivism. Interpretivism related with constructivism. Here, reality is subjective and socially constructed. So understanding is gained through the meaning people give to their experiences. When it comes to methodology, qualitative methods here are prioritized, such as interviews, case studies, and ethnography, and the key goal is to understand the perspectives and experiences of individuals. If we talk about critical theory, here reality is shaped by social, political, cultural, economic factors. When it comes to epistemology, knowledge is influenced by power dynamics. So knowledge is used to challenge the status quo, we could say, and lead to transformations. The methodology is often qualitative, with a focus on discourse analysis, participatory methods, or action research. And the key goal is to change society, to challenge the status quo and change society, not just to understand it. Pragmatism, here, the ontology is that reality is what works in practice. Epistemology means here that truth is what proves useful. Knowledge is both objective and subjective. What about methodology? Here we can use mixed methods, both quantitative and quantitative, and the key goal is to find practical solutions to problems. So if we want to summarize all these paradigms, different paradigms that we need to know about reality, the positivism, the ontology, it's objective. Observation and measurement about epistemology. It's quantitative method, explain and predict the purpose. Interpretivism, it's subjective. We care about understanding and getting meaning. It's about always qualitative methods, understanding human experience. This is the purpose. The critical theory, it's shaped by power. The epistemology focuses on critical reflection. The method prioritizes qualitative, and the purpose is to change society. Pragmatism, practical reality is the ontology. Epistemology, what works, methods, mixed methods, and the purpose solve real-world problems. Why paradigm matter? Because they shape the research questions, and we're going to see. They influence the data collection and analysis methods, and affect how results are interpreted. Now, how do ontology, epistemology, ontology relate within a research paradigm? These two are key philosophical concepts that together shape a research paradigm. So first, what is reality? Ontology concerns the nature of reality, what exists and what can be known about the world. In research, ontology questions or answer questions, what is the nature of phenomenon being studied? Is there one reality or multiple realities? For example, is social reality objective and fixed or socially constructed and fluid? Two questions like this. Epistemology, what is knowledge? Epistemology deals with the nature of knowledge and how we come to know something. It addresses questions like what counts as valid knowledge and what is the relationship between the researcher and the reality being studied. For example, can knowledge be discovered objectively, or is it co-created between the researcher and participants? Methodology, how do we study it? Methodology is a systematic approach to strategy used to gather and analyze data. We all know about this. So it flows from the ontological and epistemological assumptions, the nature of reality, and at the same time, the knowledge, both influence which methods are appropriate. For example, if reality is assumed to be objective and knowable through observation, quantitative methods can be used. If reality is seen as subjective, and constructed through social interactions, then qualitative methods might be preferred. And how they relate in research paradigm. A research paradigm is a coherent set of beliefs, assumptions that guide research. Ontology shapes your worldview about what is reality. Epistemology defines how you think knowledge about this reality can be obtained. And methodology translates these assumptions into practical research methods. So some examples I mentioned about this, the positivism, reality, objectives as singular, quantitative methods, interpretivism, qualitative methods, interviews, ethnography, etc. So here, with interpretivism, knowledge is subjective and co-created. So what are the fundamental differences between positivism and interpretivism? In terms of nature of reality, in terms of ontology, on one hand, positivism believes in single objective reality that exists independently of human perception, so reality can be measured and observed. On the other hand, interpretivism believes that reality is objective and socially constructed. Reality is understood through people's interpretations and experiences. In terms of approach to knowledge, knowledge is objective for positivism and can be obtained through empirical observation and measurement, so it relies on quantifiable data. On the other hand, interpretivism shows that knowledge is subjective, context-dependent, and gained through understanding the meanings and experiences of individuals. In terms of research methods, positivism prefers quantitative methods like experiments, surveys, statistical analysis to test hypotheses and find general laws. On the other hand, interpretivism prefers qualitative methods such as interviews, ethnography, and case studies to explore meanings, beliefs, and social processes. In terms of the role of researcher, in positivism, researcher is detached and neutral, aiming to minimize bias and influence of the study. On the other hand, interpretivism, here researcher is involved and interactive, recognizing that their interpretation affects the research. And in terms of purpose, positivism aims to explain and predict phenomena through cause-effect relationships. On the other hand, interpretivism aims to understand and interpret social phenomena from the perspective of participants. So some examples, along with strengths and limitations for both the research paradigms. For example, for positivism, what could be the strengths? The results here are less likely to be biased by researchers' opinions. So this is a strength, is very important. The objectivity, the replicability, that studies can be repeated in order to verify the results. The generalizability, because we can identify broad patterns and causal relationships. The precision. Why? Because definitely the quantitative data allows for clear measurement and comparison. On the other hand, what about the limitations? Reductionism, because these can oversimplify complex social phenomena. Complex social phenomena cannot obviously be measured only by quantifiable data. So reductionism, the fact that sometimes this paradigm ignores context, may miss deeper meanings, cultural nuances, or subjective experiences, especially we talk about social studies, where there are many complex phenomena that we need to explore. And lack of flexibility, because strict methodologies may not adapt well to new or unaccepted findings. On the other hand, we have interpretivism. What are the strengths here? That we have rich, detailed data. Interpretivism captures depth and complexity of human experience, so it's good for social sciences. Contextual understanding, recognize the influence of culture, of social and of history, social settings. Flexibility, methods can adapt to new insights during research. And empathy and meaning, because this means that we can help understand participants' perspectives and motivations. And what are the limitations? Limitations have to do with subjectivity, that results can be influenced by researcher bias. It's about limited generalizability. Findings are often specific to particular contexts and people, that it's time-consuming, and that it's difficult to reproduce exact findings due to interpreted nature. So there are challenges in replicability. Now, how do positivist and the positivist paradigms approach the same research question differently? We mentioned about this, and we can give an example here. If researching how social media affects student performance, a positivist might design a survey or experiment measuring hours spent on social media and correlating with the test scores to find statistical patterns. In the same social media study, an interpretivist, what would do? Might conduct in-depth interviews with students to understand how they perceive social media's role in their study habits and academic life. So you can see that in the same social study, how we can approach the same research question differently according to the research paradigm that we're going to adopt. So we mentioned about this. The aim is on one hand to explain and predict, on the other hand, the interpretivist approach to understand and make a meaning. In what ways now the other paradigms, critical theory and pragmatism, challenge traditional paradigms? The focus on, in terms of focus and inequality, because for example, critical theory. Critical theory here in traditional paradigms often assume that knowledge is objective and neutral. We all know about this. Critical theory argues that knowledge is influenced, believes that knowledge is influenced by social, political, and economic power structures. So it challenges the idea of neutral observation by emphasizing how research can either reinforce or challenge oppression and inequality. So the focus here of critical theory is on power and equality. Emancipatory goal, because unlike traditional paradigms that prioritize usually understanding or explaining phenomena, critical theory aims to transform society and promote social justice. Research is not about describing the world, but about changing. And subjectivity and flexibility, because critical theorists acknowledge that the researchers' own positionality and biases, rejecting the strict objectivity assumed in traditional paradigms. And interdisciplinary historical context, which actually emphasizes the importance of history, culture, and context in understanding phenomena rather than searching for universal laws or truths. Pragmatism challenges traditional paradigms, and how this is happening here. The focus is on practical outcomes. Pragmatism challenges the traditional focus on absolute truths or pure objectivity, but here the research is based on what works to solve problems and produce useful results. So it's a difference between pragmatism and critical theory. There is flexibility also in methods, because pragmatists reject the strict division between quantitative and qualitative methods. So they advocate using whatever methods are best suited in order to answer the research question, promoting mixed method approaches. And unlike paradigms that seek fixed truths, pragmatism views knowledge as provisional and evolving based on experience and action. Pragmatism starts with a real-world problem rather than abstract theorizing, focusing research on actionable solutions. So here the summary could be that critical theory is socially constructed, tied to power. Pragmatism, on the other hand, is practical and evolving. The goal of critical theory is emancipation, social change. The goal of pragmatism is problem-solving, practical impact. The researcher role in critical theory is reflexive, aware, pious. The researcher role in pragmatism is flexible and pragmatic. And the methodology in critical theory is qualitative and participatory. On the other hand, pragmatism accepts mixed methods. So how do different research paradigms influence the choice of research methods and tools? Different paradigms actually influence the choice of our methods and tools because each paradigm is based on distinct assumptions about reality, knowledge, and how to investigate phenomena. For example, positivism. we mentioned about the assumptions and the methods. Why? Because positivism values subjectivity and measurement. Interpretivism, because interpretivism seeks to understand the meanings and experiences from participant perspective. So here we have qualitative methods, and tools will include open-ended interview guides, audio, video recording device, and quality data analysis software, in Vivo, for example. On the other hand, on positivism, tools included structured questionnaires, measurement instruments, and software for statistical analysis. If we adopt the critical theory, our methods will empower marginalized voice and aim for transformative outcomes. So our methods will be qualitative, participatory action research, the narrative inquiry, discourse analysis, and the tools can include reflective journals, group workshops, or critical discourse analysis software. If we adopt the research paradigm of pragmatism, because pragmatism values what works best to answer the research question, then we will use MIC methods, combining quantitative and qualitative, and the tools that we can use could be surveys or interviews or observations or statistical and thematic analysis software. Why? Because here the choice of methods is driven by the research question and not by strict philosophical stance. The reality knowledge are practical and flexible here. So here is a summary of all these things that we can mention. And paradigms and research design. Your chosen research paradigm significantly influences how you formulate your research problem because it shapes your underlying beliefs about reality, knowledge, and the purpose of research. Here, with the positivism paradigm, we mentioned before what is happening, and with the interpretivism, problem formulation focuses on understanding meanings, experiences from social processes. The critical theory, the critical paradigm, here the problem formulation is driven by desire to expose and challenge injustice. For example, how does this policy reinforce social inequality in this group? In pragmatism paradigm, the problem formulation is guided by what works and what needs to be solved, not bound by any worldview. For example, what combination of strategies is most effective in solving this in this specific context? And of course, the positivism problem formulation here in positivism. Problem formulation will be precise, often framed as a gap in knowledge that can be tested and measured. For example, what is the effect of X on Z, etc. And about the purpose, here paradigms guide what you think is worth studying and how to frame the scope, the depth and focus on the problem. The positivist frames the problem to be studied, interpretivist frames it to be explored and understood, the critical theorist frames to be questioned and challenged, the pragmatist frames it to be solved and improved. What is the impact? That the paradigm shapes whether your research question is closed and specific. So here we have questions: to what extent this is positivist? Open-ended exploratory questions: how do people experience this? Has to do with interpretivism. In what ways does X marginalize X? So this is transformative, which has to do with critical theory. And solution focus: what approach works best to address this? Is a pragmatist theory. So how can understanding a research paradigm help ensure internal consistency in a research program? Because this has to do with alignment of components. When your paradigm is clearly defined, then your research questions, your methods, your data collection tools, analysis techniques are all based on the same set of assumptions, avoiding contradictions. This guides methodological choices. For example, a positivist approach aligns with quantitative methods, while interpretivist paradigm supports qualitative approaches. So choosing methods that reflect your paradigm ensures consistency and validity. Supports coherent interpretation because the way you interpret your findings must reflect your epistemological stance. A mismatch between your paradigm and your interpretation can weaken your conclusions. It clarifies researcher role because your paradigm helps you understand your position in the research. For example, objective observant positivism versus co-constructor of meaning in constructivism, which actually influences how you collect and interpret data. Builds credibility and rigor. Reviewers, readers, and evaluators can better trust your work when your work demonstrates philosophical coherence. It shows that your study is not just methodologically sound, but also conceptually grounded. So, in summary, you could say that understanding your research paradigm ensures that every aspect of your study speaks the same language. This internal consistency strengthens the integrity, coherence, and impact of your research. And why it is important to align your research question methodology paradigm? Because obviously this reflects your worldview, how you understand reality and knowledge. Your methodology research questions must flow logically from that worldview. For example, if your paradigm is positivist, so objective reality, your methodology might include experiments or surveys, and your research question would seek measurable outcomes. So this ensures internal consistency. Enhances validity credibility. Why? When all elements are aligned, your research is seen as more trustworthy. The methodology makes sense for the type of knowledge you are seeking, and your analysis and conclusions are more likely to be accepted by the academic community. It guides appropriate method selection, because your paradigm questions define whether qualitative or quantitative or mixed methods are most appropriate. For example, an interpretivist paradigm favors interviews or ethnography to explore lived experiences and numerical data, not numerical data. Clarifies purpose and scope. Alignment helps you stay focused because you avoid making questions that your chosen methods can answer or using methods that can't serve your questions. And strengthens argumentation and defense because in academic writing or defense, a well-aligned study is easy to justify. So you can clearly explain why you ask certain questions, how you investigate them, what kind of truth or knowledge your paradigm supports. So without alignment, your research may appear fragmented or unconvincing. With it, you create a solid foundation for meaningful, rigorous inquiry. And what are the methodological implications? Here, of course, what kind of research questions are best addressed using the positivist approach? For example, we already mentioned this. This is best for research questions that are objective, measurable, focused on cause and effect relationships, aimed at generalization and prediction. The key characteristics of a positive research question is that they have to do with hypothesis-driven, clearly defined variables, focus on quantifiable outcomes, seek to test theories or explain patterns. What is the effect of, for example, causal relationship questions? What is the effect of employee training on productivity in manufacturing companies? What does class size, how does class size affect the student academic performance in high school? Or you can have comparative questions. Is there a significant difference in anxiety level students who attend online person classes? Correlational questions. What is the relationship between social media users and sleep quality among university students? And descriptive questions. So this is an example of questions, research questions that are best appropriate for positivism. Interpretivist researchers favor qualitative methods. Why? Because interpretivism emphasizes understanding how individuals interpret and make sense of the world. So qualitative methods like interviews or observations or case studies allow researchers to explore people's perspective, feelings, and experiences in depth. Qualitative approach capture the richness and the complexity of social context, which is essential for interpreting behaviors interactions within the natural settings. And it's about also flexible and open-ended methods because unlike qualitative methods are always flexible, exploratory, allowing researchers to adapt questions and delve deeper based on participants' responses, which aligns with interpretivist goal of uncovering meanings rather than testing hypotheses. And it's about interaction also. Why? Because interpretivist approach often involves a close interaction between researcher and participants, fostering this way a co-construction of knowledge which qualitative methods facilitate. The advantage of advantage and limitations of using mixed methods. Here, this is very important because mixed methods are always prioritized, actually. If we talk about a pragmatic paradigm now, pragmatism focuses on what work-based mentioned before, often combining quantitative and qualitative approaches without being tied to a single philosophical stance. So advantages is that it has to do with practicality, flexibility, which helps capture complex phenomena from multiple angles. It's about comprehensive understanding because mixed methods offer richer insights by integrating numerical data. This leads to more nuanced and well-rounded findings. Addresses different research questions because pragmatism enables addressing both exploratory why and how and confirmatory how much and how many questions within a single study, and enhances stakeholder relevance because mixed methods can produce findings that resonate with diverse audience, policymakers, practitioners, and academics. On the other hand, what are the limitations? But there's a complexity resource intensive because designing, conducting, and analyzing mixed methods can be time-consuming, of course, expensive, and require expertise in multiple methodologies. Combining qualitative and quantitative data coherently is methodologically challenging. Researchers must carefully plan how to integrate results meaningfully rather than treating them as separate parts, and philosophical tensions because even within pragmatism, mixed paradigms can lead to unresolved tensions around assumptions of reality and knowledge. Trying to cover also both methods might result in insufficient depth in either qualitative or quantitative analysis if it's not carefully managed, and reporting so potential for superficiality and reporting complexity because writing up mixed method studies clearly and concisely can be challenging due to the dual nature of data and analysis. So here we can see that some advantages and limitations. The practical application, which research paradigm is most suitable for studying educational inequality and why? Here the critical theory is often considered the most suitable because here is a focus on power and social justice. Educational inequality is deeply tied to social, economical, social, and political power structures, and critical theory explicitly examines how these power dynamics create and sustain inequalities. This paradigm aims not only to understand inequality, but to challenge and transform unjust systems. So research under critical theory often seeks to give voice to marginalized groups and promote social change. And contextual and reflective approach, because educational inequality cannot be fully understood without exploring historical, cultural, and social contexts, something that critical theory emphasizes. So it encourages researchers to reflect on their own positionality and the role of education in perpetuating or challenging inequalities. And in terms of methodological fit, because critical theory favors qualitative and participatory methods, which are effective for capturing lived experiences and uncovering systemic barriers. Methods like case studies or discourse analysis and action research help reveal hidden structures of oppression. Another paradigms and their limitations that positivism can measure disparities, but it may overlook the deeper social causes and power relations behind inequality. Interpretivism is useful for understanding individual expression of inequality, but it's less focused on structural change. And pragmatism could be applied for practical solutions, but may lack the critical thinking that is needed here. So, in general, we could say that your personal view aligns with a specific research because obviously this helps you understand your worldview is your basic set of beliefs about reality, ontology, about knowledge, epistemology, how to find this knowledge, methodology, how to choose a paradigm that fits your beliefs. I don't know if it's here. because already mentioned about how each paradigm has a corresponding worldview alignment. Positivism, here reality is objective. Interpretivism, here reality is socially constructed and subjective. Critical theory, reality shaped by power, inequality, and social forces. And pragmatism, your focus is that here is reality is complex and that we need to find what works practically. So for how research paradigms evolved over time in the social sciences, for example, research paradigms in social science have evolved significantly over time, reflecting what? Reflecting changes in philosophical thinking, in social needs, and advances in methods. So, for example, here we see the early positivism. This is the 19th century. The key idea was inspired, by natural sciences. Social reality there is subjective and measurable. And the focus was different. The focus was scientific methods, only observation, experiments. The goal is to discover universal laws. Auguste Comte, is the one who popularized this idea of positivism, this theory. And then early to mid 20th century, here social reality is subjective and constructed through human interaction. So we have a reaction to positivism. Then in the mid of 20th century, we have a critical theory. And the later of 20th century, we have postmodernism and post-structuralism, because reality, according to them, is fragmented, unstable, and multiple truths exist. So the focus is here how to question grand narratives, language, and power relationships. The example here is Foucault and Derrida, Jacques Derrida, the two great philosophers. And in the late 20th century, till now, we have pragmatism and mixed methods. No single best way. There is, according to them, there is no best way to study reality. Method choice depends on research questions. So combining both qualitative and quantitative methods for practical outcomes, it's important in order to solve real-world problems flexibly. So the trend here is to increasing acceptance of mixed methods approach. And why this matters? Because this evolution reflects growing recognition that social phenomena are complex and can't be always captured by one lens. This is what this evolution shows here in this table. Paradigms expanded from rigid scientific views, which was the positivist paradigm, to include now multiple ways of knowing and studying social life. That's why I mentioned before about fragmented knowledge and multiple ways of multiple lens of viewing the reality and viewing knowledge. And this evolution opens up richer, more nuanced research possibilities in the social sciences. The criticism of positivism in the context of social research, this is what already mentioned, that positivists treat social phenomena as if they are natural or measurable objective facts, which is not the case. This is oversimplification. It tends to overlook the meanings, intentions, interpretations that individuals attach to their actions, which are crucial for understanding social processes, so ignores subjectivity. It often reduces complex social interactions to variables and measurable indicators, potentially missing important contextual or qualitative factors, so reductionism, and lack of flexibility, because it assumes a researcher can remain completely objective and detached, which critics argue it is unrealistic, since researchers are part of the social world they study. Inability to capture power, because they typically focus on observing phenomena, may fail to address deeper issues of power, of ideology and social justice, and deterministic view, because positivism always often implies that social behavior follows fixed laws which can overlook human agency, creativity, and unpredictability. And how does constructivism epistemology challenge the assumption of objective knowledge? Here, constructive knowledge actually is grounded in the belief that knowledge is not discovered as an objective, fixed truth out there, but rather constructed by individuals through their experiences and interactions. So constructivism argues that what we know depends on our social, cultural, historical, and personal context. Different people may construct different understandings of the same phenomenon based on their unique perspectives. Reality is multiple and co-created because unlike the assumption of a single objective reality, constructivism posits there are multiple realities and all valid within their own context. So knowledge is co-created between the researcher and participants, not simply found. Observer and observed are connected because the researcher influences and is influenced by the research process. So this means that detached, neutral observation is impossible, challenging the positivist ideal of objective knowledge. And constructivists also focus on how people interpret and make meaning of the experiences rather than measuring an independent reality. This leads to valuing qualitative methods like interviews and ethnography. Constructivist epistemology challenges the assumption of objective knowledge by rejecting the idea of a single external truth that exists independently of human perception. Instead, it views knowledge as subjective, dynamic, and socially constructed, shaped by the interplay between individuals and their world. In terms of ethics now, reflexivity, a researcher's positionality, their social, cultural, and personal background with experiences can strongly influence their choice of research paradigm because it shapes how they see the world, what they consider valid knowledge, and how they engage with research subjects. So how positionality affects paradigm choice. A researcher's identity experience influence whether they see reality as objective or socially constructed. For example, someone aware of systemic inequalities may lean towards paradigms that recognize multiple realities and power dynamics. Views on knowledge and knowing, because positionality shapes beliefs about who can produce knowledge and how. Researchers from marginalized groups, for example, might prefer paradigms that value lived experience and co-creation of knowledge, feminist approach, or critical paradigms. And conversely, those who are trained in natural sciences might lean towards positivism, valuing objectivity and measurement. Relationship with participants, positionality affects how a researcher interacts with participants, whether as an objective observer or engaged collaborator, and this influences choice between detached methods, which is part positivist, or participatory and reflexive methods, critical interpretivist paradigm. And ethical and political commitments, because researchers with strong commitments to social justice may choose paradigms emphasizing emancipation and change, and those prioritizing neutrality may gravitate towards paradigms emphasizing detachment and objectivity. So you can see social identity is a positional aspect. What is the influence on paradigm choice? Preference for paradigms valuing diverse voice and power analysis. If the positionality is academic training, then the influence is comfort with quantitative versus qualitative methods, political ethical views, the choice of emancipatory or neutral research approaches, the experience with research. This influences epistemological stance and methodology. And of course, we have ethical considerations that arise from different research paradigms. From positivism, this has to do with how researchers are expected to remain detached here and unbiased to ensure valid and reliable results. Since data is often quantitative, sometimes collected for large groups, that maintaining anonymity and confidentiality is crucial, and ensuring here that experimental manipulations or surveys do not cause psychological or physical harm. So the ethical concern here is the emphasis on detachment might lead to overlooking participants' subjective experiences or cultural contexts. For positivism, which emphasizes understanding participants' meanings and experiences requiring sensitivity and respect, consent may be more dynamic given the evolving nature of qualitative research. For example, interviews, researchers must be aware of their influence on the research and transparent about the positionality, confidentiality and anonymity. So here, what could be the ethical concern? That balancing the depth of understanding with protecting participants' privacy. This could be the ethical concern. For critical theory, ethical responsibility to use research to challenge oppression and promote change often involves participants as co-researchers, requiring mutual respect and shared decision making. Researchers must acknowledge and address power imbalances between themselves and participants. So the ethical concern here is to navigate potential conflicts between advocacy and neutrality. And the pragmatist, because here, of course, it focuses on what works best. So ethics involve balancing practical outcomes with respect for participants. Ethical considerations must adapt to diverse methods and contexts. There is clear communication about research goals, methods, and potential impacts. And what is the ethical concern? There is a risk of compromising ethical standards for what works if not carefully managed. So thank you very much for your attention, and the next session we will going to analyze, we're going to see some practical applications of all these research paradigms in different scientific disciplines. Thank you very much, and for every question. Our session
Yeah,
was more
I think
philosophical today.
you don't have time for question. It doesn't matter because this is the part one, right? Yes,
Yeah,
part one. Next week we'll have part two. Okay, I think we will. Any questions? We will talk then because I know you have other events after this, right? After this, so this is supposed to be your rest day. So it's all right. Thank you so much for this wonderful class, and I'm very sure our audience have enjoyed and gained much from this session from you. It's very descriptive and well articulated. So let's meet again next Thursday. Okay, so thank you for your time and thank you so much and happy weekend.
Thank you
Bye
very
bye.
much. This session was focused more philosophy. Next time we'll focus on practical applications.
Yeah, I'm very happy because I was about to share with you, so I thought let this session over, and then I will, not today, but I was thinking of it for a few weeks. I was thinking about bringing in some practical things, like real life examples, some so they will understand better rather than just hear. And sometimes like mugging too much also, you even we feel bored. We will stop, right? After some time we want to do something just like that. So we can include this, to make learning more interesting, and they can remember better, right? So it's a very
Okay.
good approach. Actually, it's a very good approach. I'm looking forward for the next session. And the audience, let's meet up again next session with something interesting from Professor Dr. Rania. Thank you. Bye bye.